All right, everybody. On this special edition of the Fit Rockstar Show, we have someone very special who does a lot behind the scenes. He is one of the greatest writers in our industry and in the sports. His name is Roger Lockridge.
Thank you. Thank you.
Did I pronounce your last name right?
You sure did.
Okay. Thank you for coming on and making the time.
I appreciate you having me. This is a big deal for me.
So I have to. So you're from Virginia?
West Virginia.
West Virginia. Is that where you're born and raised, or?
Yep. Born and raised my whole life. I live in the southeast part of the state, a little area called Greenbrier County. It's as country as you can imagine. Small town. Probably more cows than people.
Well, I remember meeting you at the Arnold last year. You introduced yourself to me, and then you actually do stuff for my show, the Fit Rockstar Show, right?
Yep.
Yeah, which I thank you for that. Your writing is brilliant. It's what I like about you is that you really take the time to put the athlete in a spotlight in a very positive way. And, you are truly very talented at what you do. So I want to know, how did you get involved in doing this?
So, my connection to fitness actually dates back to my personal story. My childhood, for lack of a better word, sucked. I had a dad who served in 2 branches of the military, but because of his military service and other reasons, he became an alcoholic. My mom was a preacher's daughter who rebelled and was a partier in her younger years, and because of that, she became an alcoholic. And there was a lot of childhood domestic violence in my background, and I was bullied as well in school. My childhood just wasn't fun at all, and I was looking for an outlet to help me relieve this stress. I wanted to do it in an aggressive way that didn't negatively hurt anybody else like what I had to deal with.
Sure.
I found weight training and fitness. So after my first few serious months of commitment to it, I decided I wanted to be in the industry somehow. Being a bodybuilder or a powerlifter wasn't going to happen for me. Too many injuries over the years from other things. But somehow I found out I had a talent for writing. And bodybuilding.com actually signed me to a writer's contract in 2009. It was pretty much an exchange of free supplements for articles. And by the end of 2009, they named me Writer of the Year. They gave me a paid contract, and that's kind of what opened the door for me to realize, I could make a career out of this.
Now, wait a minute. You're not giving us the full nitty gritty here. Now, you wrote an article about your transformation, right? And this is the one that took off, that somebody saw something and they saw how talented you were. Is this right? Tell me the story on that.
Yeah. Okay. So the very first article, there was actually a blog called Body Space.
I remember
MySpace
Body Space.
Big back then. Okay. So I was writing this blog to keep myself motivated because of everything else I'd been through, other reasons, depression. You can imagine how bad my headspace was.
Sure.
This blog, just random thoughts, kept me going. I didn't know it got a following. So somebody from bodybuilding.com saw my before and after pictures, and they saw that I could write, and they were like, "Can you write us an article?" Okay, sure. Either I'm going to get my 15 minutes of fame on bodybuilding.com, which back then was a big freaking deal, or I'm going to know something else I'm not good at, and this guy's going to say, "Thanks for trying." I wrote the article. I submitted it. I'm sure many Fit Rockstar fans know the name Chris Gethin.
Sure.
He was the editor of Bodybuilding at the time, and he was the one that was like, "This is great. We need to sign you. Can you do 2 a month for us?" And I agreed. And my personal transformation story got out there. I think I wrote a bench press article. I wrote a big arms article, and the rest of it was more motivational type stuff, but it built a following. And I think it was because the reader could relate to me, because I wasn't this elite bodybuilder or this elite strength athlete. I was no different than somebody that they would see in the grocery store or at Lowe's or wherever.
Mm-hmm. So one thing that we have many things in common, but one of the things we do have in common, another reason why that I wanted to talk to you is that I can relate with my own bodybuilding is, so I am also a child of domestic violence, and it sucked for me, and I come from alcoholics and drug addict family, and it's hard for me to say that I've never opened up about that, but I am now, because we've taken I do my bodybuilding, I use it in a positive light, whereas like you, with your writing, you do it in a positive way. And it's, again, I applaud you for that. But you also work with, don't you speak with domestic violence kids? What is it that you do exactly now?
Okay. So this isn't something I do as much anymore as I used to, but when the weight training thing first took off for me as a teenager, I started to develop just a tiny smidge of confidence. And by the way, for most people that don't understand, the fact that you just opened up what you opened up is a big freaking deal. So thank you for sharing that.
Absolutely.
As for me, I was 14, 15 years old maybe, and the organization that helped my family did medical school trainings. And they had survivors come in, but it was becoming a repetitive story. This is their words, not mine. And they had said, we need something different. We need a kid to come in here and talk about the kid's perspective of it, something to provide some shock value. And I was 14, I hadn't turned 15 just yet, and they had asked me to come in and speak to 200 medical students, which was nerve-wracking. Mm-hmm. But I managed to do it. And the fact that all of these people were coming up to me and telling me, we'll never forget you. When we screen kids from now on, we're going to ask about how things are at home. I've done it every year since. And now the shock value is more that the survivor is a male stepping out and speaking, because you don't see that very often. Right. Obviously, it's still the kid's story, but it's still something that 25 years later, they still ask me to do. Mm-hmm. I also used to work directly for that same organization. I was the first voice that people heard when they called. Wow. Because they needed advocacy, help, guidance, whatever. I did that for 3 years. And then I also recorded forensic interviews of kids for 4 years for another organization. So I wasn't just going out as a speaker, as a survivor, trying to raise money for these people. I was actually on the front lines helping victims and other survivors as well.
Now, I want to let people know, I'll let you say it. Obviously, I've done a lot of work on, extensive research on you. So, in one situation you dealt with was with your father, right?
Yeah. So, my father is someone that most people would describe as a good-hearted guy. He, like I said, he served in 2 branches of the United States military, and that is rare. We never went without in terms of food, needs, things like that. But the fact is, he enjoyed his alcohol. He enjoyed partying. One night, him and my mother got in a pretty bad fight, and my mom had said she was getting a divorce, and my father just completely snapped. He was in a complete drunken stupor, and the entire family was actually held at gunpoint in a 90-minute standoff. And this was in the middle of the night. Pretty much, he had decided that if we were going to leave, then we were going to leave on his terms. But at one point, he had thought he scared us straight, and he knew he was going to pass out, because when you drink as many years as he does, he got to know his body, just like a bodybuilder would know the way his body works. Sure. So before he passed out, he wanted to go dismantle the car, pull out spark plug wires, disconnect the battery, do whatever he could do before he knew he was going to sleep. My mom called 911 while he was out there, and there just happened to be a police officer a few minutes away from my house, which was, we lived in, if you've ever seen the movie Wrong Turn, you know where I'm from.
Yes.
It is the boondocks. So the fact that there was a police officer out there was a miracle. I've become a believer in God ever since. Mm-hmm. So he showed up. My dad just went and hid in the back of our property in the woods, and the police officer took us to the local DV shelter, and that kind of what led to the end of the standoff. But up until the day my father died, he swears he did not recall that incident at all. He just did not remember it.
Wow. Yeah, that is a pretty traumatic experience. And again, thank you for sharing that with us. So I'm using myself here. I didn't have the gun pointed on me, but my grandmother's son, when I was, I want to say 10 years old, he pulled a gun on my grandfather, and he was drunk and high. And it was devastating. Like, at that time, I didn't know how to even react. I want to protect my grandfather. So like an idiot that I am, or was at that time, I ran in front of my grandfather, and I'm like, protecting my grandfather. I'm like, shoot me, instead of and again, I don't know any better, but he was just pointing a gun because he was high and out of it. He was asking my grandfather for money. And again, it's a traumatic time, but I took all that I went
Mm-hmm.
through, and there were other things that happened too, and I used it in a positive light, again, like what you do, and it made me appreciate, it made me the kind person that I am today. You know, you appreciate people, strangers, you value people, because what I had went through as a kid was very traumatizing, and I never want to see anyone go through something like that. You know, so I do whatever I can to go above and beyond for people, just because of my own past. I'm very broken. You know, I'm not going to lie. You know, I'm not perfect. Nobody is really. But again, this is why I wanted to have you on, because you're just so inspiring. And I'm sorry about your father. I mean, it's truly heartbreaking. Now, you are married and you have a son?
I have two kids, actually.
Two kids.
My stepson is 18, and Roger Jr., my wife's choice to name him, I swear, is 9, and he's about to turn 10.
Okay, wow. Now, do you have any brothers, or it's just you, right?
Oh, no, there's 7 of us.
7?
Yep. My mom had 3 boys from a previous marriage, and then the crew that was there that night with my parents, there's 4 of us.
Wow.
I had a sister that's 5 years older than me. I have a younger brother that's 5 years younger than me. And then I have a baby sister that's 8 years younger than me. So at the time everything happened, my sister was 15, I was 10, my brother was 5, and my baby sister was 2.
Oh,
People always ask how I got here. I was willing to work just a little harder than everyone else. Every damn day. If I can have hundreds of hours back, you know I'm gonna grab them. Spending hours prepping chicken, rice, and vegetables, F that. I rely on perfect nutrition. I rely on trifecta.
And my sister and I actually did the same thing you talked about doing. We stood in front of my mother, and because that seemed to be the only thing we knew we could possibly do.
Right.
And, you know, when you're a child in that situation, your brain already isn't completely developed. It's still going through the whole learning phase, adapting phase, developing phase. So it's not rational like an adult's brain is.
sure.
Which is why a lot of kids feel like things are their fault when they deal with situations like ours. Or if something couldn't be stopped, they put the blame on themselves, when they don't realize that they're probably more courageous, gutsy, all the positive outlets that, you know, they can even imagine, because they've dealt with these things that a normal child that had a normal childhood would have never went through.
Right.
So my story was actually a part of a book called Invincible. And there was actually 10 of these lies that are believed by most of these people, because there's actually 1 billion of us. There's 1 billion people on the planet that have dealt with childhood domestic violence. Yet there's less than 15% awareness. So what we're doing right now is actually a pretty big deal.
Yeah.
And there were these 10 lies, you know, guilt, shame, ugliness, lack of attractiveness, unloving, when, you know, it's all the exact polar opposites. I can't think of all 10 off the top of my head now. But if you go to cdv.org, childhood domestic violence, cdv.org, you'll see them all. And it's actually amazing what you will learn about yourself by going to that website, because it's almost like a reintroduction to yourself. Because when you realize what you went through and how you've overcome it, it'll empower you in ways you couldn't imagine.
Well, listen, I still think to this day, I mean, listen, I thank bodybuilding. Bodybuilding saved my life. You know, I went into sports. I was going to be a professional soccer player, tore my ACL, and then decided to go into bodybuilding, a sport that I did not like. And then once I tried it, then I ended up loving it. It was the best thing ever. But, you know, it was very difficult going through what I went through. And I recall back, I think these times, sometimes little things will remind me of it, you know, because I've tried to block it out. And I think, man, I could have been an alcoholic. I could be on the streets. I could be doing heroin. With everything I've went through, and no child should have ever went through with what I went through, ever. You know, I didn't have the love that a kid deserves to have, you know, that attention. It was just me, myself, and getting beat up every here and there, you know, by someone very close to me. You know, and it hurts. But again, the bodybuilding saved me. I love it. It makes you feel a certain way. But moving on, this is about you, and I'm happy that I was able to talk about that, because I've been wanting to talk about that for a while, and so I can relate to you, and so you helped me talk about something that's been very difficult to talk about. So it relieves me to do that because I hold a lot of stuff inside.
It means the world to me that you actually trusted me with the position that you.
You are such a nice person. When I met you at the Arnold, I can just tell you were so nice. And again, when I read your articles, the way you are, how you talk about the people, it's just so empowering, you know? So you have written over 2,100 articles, or am I off?
It's probably closer to 2,200 now.
2,200 articles.
It's definitely in the 2000s.
You've had 1 million views off of your first one that you wrote?
Not my first one, my biggest one. There was one on bodybuilding.com. It was called Zero to Hero. And I think as of now, it's actually had over 2 million views. I think it just recently broke 2 million. But that was my biggest one by far.
Now, are you really good friends with Ronnie Coleman?
I don't know if I'd say really good friends or not. I will say that we have talked quite a few times, and he sent me a few birthday messages in the past, and I've sent him obviously a few. And I think I've interviewed him 5 times now.
Now, you were inspired with bodybuilding by Ronnie Coleman, right? Was it 98?
Yes. So when I first decided I wanted to really get into this weight training thing, I didn't know if I was going to be a competitive bodybuilder, but I knew I wanted to get bigger and stronger. One of the first copies I ever saw of Muscle and Fitness was the one where Ronnie won the Olympia in 98 and he had Steph Flex Wheeler. And when I was flipping through those pages, aside the fact that he was big and shredded, I found out he was a police officer. And it was like, oh, wow, he does something full-time like that helps other people. And he's the world champion of his sport. And just for whatever reason, he inspired me. This was long before, you saw the 800-pound squat, the 800-pound deadlift, the 200-pound dumbbell presses. It was just that alone. The fact that he was a full-time police officer and he committed to bodybuilding the way he did, and that he was an upset story. No one expected him to win the Olympia that year. It was supposed to be either Flex Wheeler or Sean Ray.
Well, he didn't even expect to win the Olympia that year. He was shocked.
He didn't. Which he's told me before, as he was waiting for his name to get called and it didn't, it was like, oh, wow, this is a dream come true. Oh, wow, this is a bigger dream come true. And then when it's him and Flex, and he was like, I'm going to get second at the Olympia. And then he heard Flex's name called, and of course he hit his knees and, oh my God, I'm Mr. Olympia. That whole story just, inspired me even more.
Mm-hmm. Now,
and
go ahead. I'm sorry.
I had done a podcast myself in like 2010, and I just happened to take a shot in the dark and asked if he'd be willing to be interviewed. And I happened to catch him between the time he was contracted by Flex and he was contracted by MD. There was a little gap, and I just happened to nail it right on the bullet head. He was like, yeah, I'm free. Let's do it. And we spoke for an hour on that podcast, and he was like, you took such good care of me. If you ever need anything, let me know.
Wow.
And then in 2011, when he launched his signature series, his supplement line, he did an interview for bodybuilding.com, and I got to do the interview. So we just kind of stayed connected off and on ever since.
What is one of the most fascinating things that you learned about Ronnie Coleman?
How humble he is.
He is very humble, yes.
He never puts himself above anybody else. To see him when he is meeting fans and how he gives each person the time they deserve. He wants that person to feel like a friend, not a fan. I would kind of have expected that anyway, but it was still a pleasant surprise to see how much more he was than I'd even imagined.
And I heard that you were messaging. So Ronnie obviously fell last year at the Arnold, which, that was... Bob was sitting there talking to somebody else and he didn't even pay attention to that. I get on him all the time about that. But you actually text him, and he's answering your texts as he's on stage.
Yeah, so that was the 2021 Arnold, for fans that don't know. And I'm sitting in the crowd, and I saw him fall. So I text. I did not expect him to answer. I just expected him to get it later on, or maybe his wife would see it. Hey, I hope you're okay. Let me know if you're all right, or if you need help, I'm here. And he just replied back like a minute later, oh, I'm great. I'm at the Arnold in a seminar. And I'm like, I know, I'm in the crowd. And he goes, oh. Well, I did that on purpose, LOL.
Right.
And I saw him later that evening, of course, and he was like, yeah, I'm fine. Don't worry about it. It's all good.
How about when he won that Lifetime Achievement Award? What a touching moment that was. It put me in tears.
I tell you what, that's as close to anything bodybuilding related that's ever put me in tears, because I could feel that.
And then the whole audience and how they got, too, that was so powerful.
Yeah, especially because of the part that, his mom was not here anymore. My mom passed away almost 8 years ago now, and I still feel it to this day. And yeah, for him to be in that moment and for him to get overwhelmed, and even Arnold got overwhelmed. Yeah, that was probably one of the most touching moments I've ever seen on a bodybuilding stage.
And this is another thing I have in common with you. So I lost my mother 7 years ago, and to this day, it's still I can just break down and cry because it's so deep.
Right.
Mom always stays close. But let me. I want to ask you something. To you, you wrote an excellent article. What is the Olympia experience? So tell me, what is the Olympia experience?
Well, the Olympia experience is something I didn't get to actually experience for myself until 2021. I had never had an opportunity to cover the Olympia in person. I've done social media, I've done online, but I've never actually been in Vegas. And in 2021, of course, it was in Orlando. And for someone that has never been there, the Olympia experience is seeing the world of bodybuilding come to life right in front of your eyes. It is the epitome of fitness, the epitome of strength sports, in my opinion. It is inspiration personified. You literally cannot walk into the building without feeling the energy of knowing you are around the best of the best on the planet that are trying to establish themselves as the best on the planet. And as someone that's in a media role and in a fan role, you want to step up your own personal game because you are around those people, you are around that energy. And the whole mantra I've had since I've started in this industry was, if I want to be the best in the industry, I have to be the best for the industry, which is why I try to do everything I can to put everything first and positive and, try to shine as big of a spotlight on athletes as I can, which is an example I actually follow from you, as well as Dennis and Linda and Whitney and Alina. Y'all do the same thing. So I try to follow that path. And when you go to the Olympia and you realize who you're around and what they're doing, it makes you want to step your game up even more.
Sure. Absolutely. There is something that I wanted to also, because you have 3 favorite sayings. And what is it? Make the best hand out of the cards you're dealt.
Well, that one's not mine. That was something I had heard from, a long time ago. I can't remember where I heard it. But pretty much you have no control over the cards you're dealt, but you do have control of what you can do with them. And, I knew I wasn't going to be the athlete in the arena. So if nothing else, I wanted to somehow be able to have something to do with the arena. And I wanted to be able to help contribute to these athletes that are in the most positive way. And I want to try to help connect fans with this because I know what this industry's done for me and I know what it could do for so many other people. So while no, I wasn't meant to be Mr. Olympia or I wasn't meant to be the world's strongest man, I could try to connect the person reading my content to the people that are. And if somewhere along the line, one of those people gets into this and they prosper from it, then I've done my job.
So you actually have, again, a very incredible story, how you got the dream job, which is being a freelance sports writer. So before you lost your job, you're staying in your car? You're homeless? Almost homeless?
No, I was homeless.
You was homeless.
So 2007, right after my dad passed away and I graduated college, the kid who grew up with 2 alcoholic parents, I was working as a bouncer because that was literally the only job I could get my hands on. And the pay was so little, I could not maintain my $300 a month utility rent. So I paid my last month, I could, and then, told the landlord I'm going to have to move on. I could not bring it to myself to go move back in with my mom.
Sure.
And, of course, it wouldn't have worked out anyway because my mother lived in an efficiency apartment herself. That wouldn't have worked very well. All of my other siblings have families. So I'm living out of my car for a couple of days. And then a person that also lived in the same apartment building I did actually got kicked out. So we joined forces and we went in together on another apartment. At that same time, both of us were seeing girls that turned out they lost their places. So it became a group of 4. It was almost like Three's Company, only it involved 4 people.
Right.
And between the 4 of us, we somehow made it work The other couple went on and did their own thing about a year later. And of course, the other lady in that situation became my wife.
Oh, wow.
So,
Huh.
it was it's a weird love story, but it's a love story nonetheless that ended with a happy ending.
Well, how did you guys meet?
My brother worked at a local grocery store. I was picking him up from the end of his night shift, and she was working. And I would keep her company while I was waiting on my brother to get off work. And finally, one afternoon, she had just came to me because I wasn't good at receiving hints. And she finally just came out and was like, look, let's hang out. I want to start seeing you. Okay, cool. And one thing led to another. And then I found out what happened to her and her situation. And I went through the same situation myself, and we paired up.
Now, when you've been in the industry for 15 years writing and 7 years full time.
Yep.
So when was the lucky break for you when you became full time, actually making good money?
Okay. So right after my mother passed away in 2014, I had been working at the Child Advocacy Center. I was recording the forensic interviews, and I was still with bodybuilding.com and Ironman magazine. I was writing for both. And bodybuilding.com just came to me and said, hey, you need to start exploring freelancing. Like, you need to start making yourself grow, get out from under our umbrella. I figured that was their way of telling me they wanted me to kick rocks, but that wasn't the case. The editor just actually had my best interest at heart. So within like a week, 3 editors of 3 different groups reached out to me and asked me to start writing for them. This all happened organically. Well, when I agreed and started moving, my wife and I were still in that tiny apartment, and it was like, we could possibly get a house. So we looked at the possibility, and 5 months later, I'm making more money writing than I was doing my child advocacy job, and I was able to close on my house.
Wow.
And it was like, well, okay, if I'm making more money from doing this, and I'm realizing I've kind of reached burnout with the advocacy job, because as passionate as I was and as great of a job as that is, everybody has a finish line. And I had been speaking since I was 14. At that point, I'm in my mid-30s. I'd put in over 20 years, starting as a teenager. It was time. And when that worked out and my income situation changed, it was like, let's roll the dice. Let's see if I can make it full-time as a freelancer. And it's worked out beautifully, because what I'm not doing for one group, I could be doing for another group. I'm covering multiple strength sports, so I'm not necessarily stepping on anybody's toes. I'm still contributing in a positive way to all these different groups. And I've been there through my son's most developmental years, which, as we have just talked about, I did not have that same fortune with my most developmental years. So now my son is going to have a lot more good memories of his childhood than I had of mine. So it was worth every single risk I took and every time I rolled the dice. And 7 years later, it's still here and it's still paying off for me.
So can we get a taste? I know you write for Muscle and Fitness. Who else do you write for?
So Muscle and Fitness, I do a lot of the recaps I do for all the shows. I also do a column called Fit to Serve, which honors the military, various fitness members of the military. And then I do bodybuilding things here and there. Men's Health, I do interviews of various fitness people, that help share information more with beginners or just general folks looking to get in shape. They actually profiled me as well, which blew my mind. Barbend.com is pure strength sports, powerlifting, strongman, bodybuilding. I do all 3. I occasionally do work for Muscle Insider, and I do my own training content for muscleandstrength.com, active.com, and stack.com.
You diet down, train hard, and supplement smart for months. When the time comes to step on stage, don't leave your tan to chance. Go with the pros. Pro Tan. #1 worldwide since 1987 and the official sponsor of the Olympia for the last 15 years. Don't step on stage without it. Pro Tan.
So all those videos on your Instagram, that is out of your, where is that? That's at your home?
Yep, that's in my
nice
barn.
Gym. You got a nice gym set up.
I've pieced it together piece by piece. I actually started putting that together right after I moved into my house, because the nearest gym is 30 minutes away. It started out with just a squat rack, the bench, and some free plates. And just whenever I had some spare change, I bought something else here and there, or I worked with an equipment company and had something sent to my house. And pretty much outside of a Smith machine, I could do almost anything you can do in a gym.
So going back to your article, Muscle Insider, real quick, as I want to touch up on this. So obviously, we all know who Nick Strength and Power is. You
Yes.
wrote an article on the when Arnold responded to Redcon pulling out, and
Oh,
so
yes.
Nick, what did he do? He talked about your article. He shared. What did he do with that? 'Cause
Well,
that's a big deal.
All credit to Nick. Nick has actually featured a few of my articles over the years, but that was the one that seemed to pop the most. Pretty much when he revealed that, Arnold Schwarzenegger had responded to Redcon 1 and they had found a new sponsor and that they were going to cover the athletes going to Columbus in case Redcon didn't, which Aaron Stingerman later on said he would. Muscle Insider had me do that story. And Nick Straight the Power just shared it on a video the next day, and that thing blew up like gangbusters.
Oh, I'm sure. Right.
Muscle Insider was quite pleased with me after that, for obvious reasons.
Right.
And I don't know how closely Arnold actually paid attention to that, but I know his team at least thought enough of me to, realize, okay, if this guy reaches out to us for anything, we know we could trust him.
Well, Arnold obviously, I think he retweeted you, or I don't know how that. I can't even say the proper lingo for Twitter. I don't use Twitter very much. But when you actually did a nice article on Daniel Camacho, the world's strongest firefighter, and Arnold had thanked you for that in your article, which he gave you a lot of kudos for that.
Yeah. So here's the story with that. I am at the Arnold Strongman Classic, and Arnold's team was there, of course, because he was going around checking out the events, and I got to meet him. And when I met him that day, I actually got to meet Arnold, shake his hand as well. And, we took a quick photo, and then we went on about watching the competition. Well, his team reached out to me and said, hey, we've never had any mainstream coverage for this firefighter thing, and he's very passionate about it.
Yes.
If you're around on Sunday, can you do something? And I'm like, well, I'm not around on Sunday, but send me video of everything, and I will do my best to, do the best recap I can possibly do of it. And they did. I got to see every rep, every set, every second of that contest. And I got to see Daniel's performance. And, the fact that he was so consistent was incredible, especially with 3 weeks notice that he was even going to compete.
Right.
So, I wrote up the story. Jeff Tomko and Zach with Muscle Fitness put it up real quick. And Arnold's team appreciated it. So when Arnold gave me that personal shout out, that was a big deal to me.
Oh, yeah, of course. That's a huge deal. And you were also in Muscle and Fitness, I want to say, with Arnold on the cover. The rare photos of Arnold. Was that Muscle and Fitness?
No. Okay, so it was Iron Man.
Iron Man, yes.
Iron Man in 2010, they do an Arnold birthday issue every year.
Right.
Or at least they used to. And in 2010, the August issue, I believe, it was Arnold's birthday issue. And they did rare photos that John Balick and a couple other photographers took, and they reprinted one of my bodybuilding.com articles in it. That was actually my very first print magazine.
Oh, wow.
And when, I shared it and I showed my appreciation, and I guess it did very well for them. The editors reached out to me and said, hey, we want you to start writing for us too. That's how I got connected with them for 5 years. So I got to sit under the learning tree of the great John Balick and Steve Holman. And I'm sure Ruth Silverman.
Of course. I love Ruth.
Yeah, as do I.
Yeah.
Their stuff was some of the stuff I would read when I was a big fan of this, and obviously I still am. So now to have been under the same brand as them for 5 years, oh geez, that was a next level for me to be able to take that step.
So people, I just want to say this to the fans out there who are watching. You have interviewed a lot of superstars in different sports. One of them, Venus Williams, recently.
Yeah, that was just a month ago.
Yeah. Now I'm so jealous of you. What's your number now? 50, 60 with celebrity sports?
Well, celebrities, I don't know the exact number. World champions, it's over 50.
Over 50.
Either Olympic gold medalist or world champion in their sport. I have interviewed over 50.
How do you?
Sports and movie sports.
I have to ask you, how do you keep up with all the sports? Because that's a lot.
A lot of it is past champions, and I was a fan of all sports when I was a kid. So, and numbers just stick to me. So, like when Venus Williams is the #1 ranked golfer in the world, and she won the Olympic gold medal in 2000, and she's a 5-time Wimbledon champion. For whatever reason, those things stick with me. I guess I have a connection to Rain Man. Just right place, right time, I guess. These opportunities come up, and people Google my name, and they see that I've done these interviews with these people,
Right.
and they see that they could trust me, and they give me the opportunity, and I take advantage of it.
Have you interviewed David Goggins?
No, I haven't interviewed David. I was in the same room with him at the International Sports Hall of Fame.
I remember that, yeah.
So I got to hear his speech that was there that day. But it was just a brief, David, congratulations, nice to meet you. And he said the same. And but I've never got to interview him yet.
That International Sports Hall of Fame, isn't that something?
That's a great event. It
Yeah,
really is.
it is. Dr. Bob
I've
Goldman.
been to every one of them except 2. And I missed 2020 because of COVID. It was just starting, and my family didn't want me to risk it. And in 2021, I was actually covering the Olympia at the same time they had the Hall of Fame, so I didn't get to
Right.
attend. But other than that, I've been to every one of them. And I've actually done some form of coverage for every single one of them.
Yeah, Dr. Bob Goldman does a phenomenal job with that. So, out of everybody you've interviewed, who's your favorite?
Oh, my goodness. Who? Ronnie.
Ronnie, of course.
I'm gonna go with Ronnie. I know that sounds like the easy answer because I've interviewed him the most, but when they say don't meet your heroes, I can tell you that is absolutely false, or at least in his case. For him to have been a bodybuilding hero of mine and then to have turned out to be as good a guy as he is, that would be the obvious choice for me. If I have to pick a second, I'm gonna probably give you one that the bodybuilding crowd may not know. He's a guy named Martins Lisis, 2019 World's Strongest Man. He won the Arnold Strongman Classic this year, and I mean he's such a good guy. He cares so much about his fans. He's dedicated to his sport. He's dedicated about doing more for the sport, and he's a gem when it comes to doing interviews with. He trusts me. I trust him. He would probably be the second choice.
Who is there anybody that was difficult to work with as far as for an interview?
I know this isn't the answer that everybody wants to hear, but no, not really. And I think, again, it goes back to, there's that initial, can I trust this guy? Is he going to have my best intentions at heart? But once I break the mold and they see that I'm a genuine fan of them, or I at least have done my research on them and I want to help them, it seems to be easy. So, no, I really can't say there's a bad one.
And
Or at
what are
least
your
not yet, knock on wood.
what are your goals for the future?
Close on my house in the next 10 years. Get my wife's business off the ground. She is doing apothecary. She makes hand creams, lotions, beard scrubs. And she wants to make that take off. I want to help her do that. I would like to be able to interview 100 world champions before it's all said and done.
Well, you're halfway there.
I'm halfway there. So hopefully in the next decade, I can get that done. Other than that, I got to tell you, Isabel, I've done almost everything I've really wanted to do personally in this business. I might step a toe into doing a powerlifting meet someday. If I could stay healthy enough to do it. It would be a Masters, and it wouldn't be nearly the numbers that people expect, but just to be able to say I stepped on the platform. There might or may not be a men's physique show at some point in my future. We'll see.
A men's physique.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't have the legs for bodybuilding. But men's physique, I think I could pull off at some point just with a long enough diet. But no, other than that, as much as I would love to have been the athlete in the arena, to have been the supporter that I have been and to do all the cool things I've done in this industry, at this point, I'd almost feel selfish if I wanted to ask for any more than I already have.
Who was the first pro you met when you got into the industry?
That would be one Mr. Brandon Curry.
Oh.
I met him at the 2010 Arnold. I literally bumped into him. He was coming out of the BSN booth, and I was walking by, gazing at, admiring everything because I didn't know where I'd been. It was such a crazy sight, and I literally bumped shoulders with him. And I was like, oh, shoot, you're Brandon Curry. I introduced myself to him. I met Brandy the same day. And, man, to have seen the success he has had since has been nothing short of inspiring.
I agree. So you also have interviewed celebrity trainers.
Yes, I've interviewed a couple. The main one here recently has been Don Saladino, who Muscle Fitness fans will know through him being on the Reps podcast and him through doing Sleeveless with Frank Seppi.
Oh, yeah.
I have also interviewed Alex Guerrero from Muscle Fitness, who, of course, most people associate with Tom Brady. And both of them were pretty cool to interview. They both had tangible information that I could give the readers to take with them. Man, they are both so accomplished.
When are you getting that Tom Brady interview?
I'm working on it. I'm trying to break TB12 down. We'll see.
Who's your wish list for interviews that you want to interview?
Arnold, Michael Jordan. Those are probably the only two, to be honest with you.
Me, thank you.
No, I'll add well, of course. Well, I mean, you've interviewed me now, so I guess I have to turn the tables at some point.
Well, you don't have to. I guess I'm not interesting enough. That's okay. I see how it is. It's all right. No worries. I'm joking.
I love you, Isabel.
I love you too. I'm kidding. Tell me about, real quick, tell me about Victoria. I cannot pronounce her name, but she's military?
Yes, Victoria through the armed forces, through the Fit to Serve column. So she is the wife of Tony Roberts, who most people in the DMV area will know. She is a promoter of NPC, DMV folks shows. She has competed herself. She is an amateur Olympia winner, and she is directly connected to the Ukraine.
Oh, wow.
And she has been raising money for folks in the Ukraine during this whole crisis. And this is completely organic, folks. I did not plan on talking about this, but since Isabel brought it up, if you go to her Instagram page, look for Victory with a K in it. She is raising money and it goes directly to the people there. And I'm sure she would appreciate any and all support she could get. But that was a very inspiring lady. Can I tell you the story about how I met her?
Yeah, real quick, sure.
Yeah, it's quite funny. So I'm sitting in the VIP section at the Armed Forces show. Tony knew who I was. The great Gary Unit knew who I was. Victoria didn't know who I was. So she came over wondering who this random dude was that was sitting in the VIP section. So I had to verify myself to her. And then when Rob Wilkins introduced me to her, she says she felt bad about it. But, she was clearly just doing her job, and I understood. But that was just kind of a funny introduction to each other. And then, lo and behold, 3 months later, I feature her.
Rob is a great person, too, by the way. Love Rob.
He is great man. I love working for him.
Yeah, I saw your story in Victoria, and that was very interesting. So I had to ask you about that. So I'm going to have to wrap us up. There's so much to talk about with you, but I want people to follow you and get you. How do we find you? How do we find your articles?
Oh, okay. Well, I pretty much share all of them on my Instagram page, and you can find me at Lockridge, ROCK, Lockridge. I'm there on Twitter under the same handle. I share all my articles through both of those outlets. Other than that, muscleandfitness.com is where you're going to see my stuff every week, thanks to the great Jeff Tomko and Zach Ziegler. And, of course, always check back there for all the podcast recaps, like this one, for instance. I love doing these every week.
And also, too, if you can leave us with a positive message, that'd be great, because you're such a positive person.
I will use one of those 3 quotes that you said earlier that I had. One of them that really stuck with me, I came up with it on my own, but it's been associated with me ever since. No goal is unreachable if your will is unbreakable. If there is something you want to do and you have the willpower enough to pursue it, great success will eventually come your way. I believe I'm living proof of that.
You are 100% proof of that. Thank you, Roger, so much for being on here and taking your time out of your busy day. Appreciate you. Love your writing. Wonderful, brilliant writer. So thank you so much again. It's a pleasure having you here on the Fit Rockstar Show.
It is an absolute honor, Isabel. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you,
Right
hon.
here.